Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, got some Red Raider football kickoff times revealed, and we're calling them the Bob Seger boys because it's all night moves so far. Also getting to a transfer portal pursuit, unlike any other for Joey McGuire and Tech. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, depending upon what you wanted to happen with some kickoff times being announced for Texas Tech football, you might be breathing a sigh of relief today. We said on yesterday's show that we were looking forward to having some times to discuss here today, some scheduling clarity offered up after our conversation yesterday, and at least for a handful of games now, we do know what time Texas Tech is going to be kicking things off, beginning in Wyoming, September 2nd, with an appearance on CBS, which was a little bit of a curveball for your boy personally, just right out of the gates. But you get one of your biggest non-conference dates in a long, long time under the lights. Going to be 6 o'clock the following week as you host Oregon. Also got a prime timer there with Tarleton State. That's a streaming broadcast, so traditionally you're able to set that how you like it. That'll be a sixer as well. You also got an evening kickoff against Texas in Austin at the end of the year, and 6 o'clock on Thursday night, FS1 against Texas Christian in your conference schedule. So let's tackle it all, Chris. And like I said, I think depending on what you were rooting for, and I'm rooting for under the lights, you may have been breathing a bit of a sigh of relief when you got this news yesterday.
Yeah, there used to be a game show back in the day named, I think it was called Pressure Luck, and it's like you just, it's like almost like a slot machine, right? And the guy's like sitting there and he's got to press the button and he's yelling no whammies, and the whammy was like
one of my favorites.
Yeah, see, it's like you crapped out if you got a whammy on there, and it was like this little gremlin looking character, and they just yell no whammies, no whammy. Yeah, that's right, and then stop, and then it's like, okay, what do we got? And I think that the Tech fan yesterday,
how high were the people that made that show, Chris? No whammies. You're jogging my memory like crazy.
Yes, they got no whammies. Yeah.
Right.
So, I think the main kickoff time that most people were interested in, because I think that game at the very end of the season, you knew it was going to be kind of at it could have been an 11 a.m. or 2 p.m. I was kind of surprised it was a night kick against Texas the day after Thanksgiving. That's a Friday, so they really space games out on those days. And really, you could have even told me it was going to be a 10 a.m. kick, and it wouldn't have surprised me. It's just like that's kind of one of those holiday type deals that they spread those games out. Typically, when you've played Texas the Friday after, it's rarely been like a late one. It's always been either on Thanksgiving night or the day after Thanksgiving or the Saturday after Thanksgiving or whatever. I mean, that week, but it's always been like a midday or early kick for the most part. So that one, I wasn't going to be shocked about anything we got. The main one, though, that I think most people were really curious about was the Oregon kick, because you knew you were going to get a kick time, whenever these were initially announced. It's an early kick or early part of the schedule. It's a home game for you, so it falls under the Big 12 contract. And it could have been, because it is on Fox, it could have been in that big noon, Fox territory where they kick it off at 11, and that would have been that, again, gotten the national recognition that it deserved and all that. But I think everybody pretty pleased with the 6 o'clock kick. Now, those that follow this will also note that the game, I think it's either on ESPN or ABC where Alabama will host Texas basically at the same exact time. And that's my guess where like College game day would be and all that, but you can't worry about any of that. But I was, for the Tech fan and for a huge non-conference game, I was really pleased to see it get like nighttime, status, I guess. And
yeah.
So, and I was with you on the CBS thing. I saw the little icon next to it, and I thought, is this CBS Sports Network? Because there is it's kind of like an FS1 that if you have a sports tier on most cable packages, CBS has got this alternate just all sports channel, and they're going to carry some basketball and football and all those things. But that's what I kind of, I guess, thought. I was like, there's just no way this is on like the big boy, the network, and it is. The Mountain West is part of their TV contract. I read that as soon as I was kind of starting to look for it a little bit. They get a couple of primetime and a couple of main slots in those first couple of weeks, and obviously Wyoming's got Texas Tech showing up to their place. So again, it falls under their TV contract, and so nighttime kick on CBS, a pleasant surprise for sure.
Yeah, really interesting there, and wouldn't have been surprised to see like a Wyoming game on CBS Sports. I was thinking the same thing, checking which logo exactly we were looking at. CBS Sports, the one-time broadcasting home of the great Mike Leach. If you missed that era with Mike Leach in the booth, well, you missed a mouthful, to say the least. Did you ever get to take in one of the games Coach Leach called, Chris?
And he was
you're probably busy on a lot of those days.
Yeah, but I think he was sitting like in the press box at Air Force and some different, like some different venues like that. And yeah, he cleared his throat a bunch.
It was great. It was great. He changed nothing. He changed absolutely nothing to be a color analyst. I think he was saying, well, he might have cleaned up the language a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. But I think he was just simply being Mike Leach as a color analyst, which is probably what they wanted. So kudos to CBS Sports Network for being the one that gave Coach Leach a microphone once upon a time. Looking forward to that one, and that's going to be a tough start. I don't know what Wyoming is as a football team, but, man, on the road, to kick the gates open, you kind of never know what you're going to get in week one. I shouldn't say entirely. It's not a total mystery, but obviously it's the first time you're doing anything under the lights, and you're going to do it on the road from Wyoming. The Oregon game, I'm completely invested in the fan perspective. Texas Tech has never cut me a check for anything as far as like broadcast windows or whatever. So I'm completely invested in the Tech fan perspective part of this conversation. And this is a huge win for the Tech fan, obviously. I get the big noon window and, the pregame show that Fox does that they might have brought to campus. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Baylor and Utah on Fox at noon. I could have that wrong, but I thought maybe that was who was going to be there. Yeah, 11
a future Big 12 matchup.
That's actually ESPN. I apologize. I lied to you. I don't know who Fox's is at 11, but they're getting Iowa State at 2:30, and then a little bit later on in the day will be Tech and Oregon there at 6 o'clock. But Chris, look, they still call it primetime. Have you noticed that? Like even Fox, when they're pimping the matchup, like, oh, our big noon window here. This is the big boy, but also here in primetime, we have Tech and Oregon. You wouldn't call it primetime if it wasn't something that was still appealing. And there's been like this shift. I know you've seen it. We've talked about it. Where like there's their marketing play to get across to the fans that, no, you want your team at 11 a.m. This is our most precious window. And all the fans are like, we don't care. The grill is barely warm by 11 a.m. We're just getting started in the parking lot by 11 a.m. So I was pumped for this. I don't know what Tech's missing out on because people talk about this is the most valuable window, your greatest exposure, et cetera. And you do have to go head-to-head with Alabama, Texas. So good luck with that, although I'm sure Texas will be getting shellacked, so people will be tuning out of that one by about middle second quarter, looking for a good game. Maybe the Red Raiders will give it to them. But I was completely thrilled with the night kickoff for Oregon, and I know that makes me a selfish fan, but I am what I are, and that's what I are. Chris, I am curious to get your thoughts, though, little bit later on in the schedule. Texas Christian Thursday night. That one was going to sting anyway. But you're isolated there, hoping for a platform that's going to be one of the better ones. And then you get FS1, where even really intriguing games go to die. FS1 does not draw a number. So that one stung a little bit for me to see that network association announced, though we already knew it was going to be a Thursday nighter. But first, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book and the official sports book of Locked On. And with the NBA Finals here, FanDuel is upping the ante. And if you've never gotten in before, now is the perfect time, because new customers get set up with that no sweat first bet. Now $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet don't bank. That's $2,500 back to you in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So go now, download the FanDuel app from the App Store. Safe, secure, easy to use, and get your first bet in with the no sweat first bet. You're always paid instantly with FanDuel, and there's no better place to get all your bets cooking than with America's #1 sports book. So head on over now to FanDuel.com/LockedOn and get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. That's FanDuel.com, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So that one stung a little bit for me to see that network association announced, though we already knew it was going to be a Thursday nighter.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the contract, that FS1 gets some of those specialty broadcasts or whatever. I think I want to say, I remember watching West Virginia and Baylor. Maybe it was that last year on FS1 on a Thursday night. There's been a few others, but and so you knew that was going to be a night kick. But that's one that you and I won't be watching on TV, so it doesn't really matter to us, because we'll be at the Jones. Hammering some frog flesh on that night, hopefully. But that could be that's one of those sneaky, really swing games on Tech's schedule, and I think it's frustrating to some that it is on a Thursday, because you miss maybe some of your fan base from the Midland, Odessa, or the Metroplex or whatever, that usually just make a weekend of it, and maybe on a weekday they can't get here. So I'm not real sure what to think there. But yeah, the whole FS1 component. Hey, but it is as frustrating as it is not to have it on like a bigger channel. FS1 is still carried by a lot of folks. It's just, yeah, you got to look for it maybe on occasion to figure out. I don't know if I'm watching it a ton other than these games, but. Yeah. So
I don't know what it is, man, but consistently, if you've dug into any TV numbers, any ratings, FS1 people don't find it. I don't know why. It seems to be so specifically anonymous, if you will, when you're playing on FS1. I just I don't know.
Well, and guess what? Guess what? We're gonna hear FS1 a lot when it comes to the next round of the TV deal, the one that hasn't even begun yet with your new TV deal, because that's going to be the home for a lot of your basketball, I think.
Yeah.
I think
that's actually an interesting component.
Yeah.
The Fox basketball. We've got into some of that a little bit, and we'll have plenty of time to get to it further. But
I think people have forgotten about that part. But yeah, there'll be Fox is going to kind of get involved there, and that's part of what they wanted. And see, though, it was the conversation we had yesterday. There's some of that I would love to know more details on, and maybe that's what Brett Yormark knows, as we've talked about some of this basketball stuff. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned FS1, and we're talking about it because I think in the future that may be where they try to gain traction a bit, is that we'll carry a lot of Big 12 hoops, and so maybe more people will find our channel. We've got more inventory and reasons for people, because other than, I think, Major League Baseball and maybe the playoffs and like Big 12 football, I don't know what else I'm going to FS1 for. But in the future, I'd be, if I'm at home on whatever night and Tech's not playing, maybe you're watching Oklahoma State and Baylor play on FS1, and that's worse, so anyway.
I mean, I don't know what I'm going to ESPNU or ESPN for that matter anymore, other than live sports. It's kind of the boat that they're in. Although I did go to ESPN for an American Gladiators documentary here this week.
Was this good? It's 4 hours. It's 4 hours.
It's a two-parter. I hadn't even seen the second part yet. I don't know if I will, because the first part was a clubbing over the head by people who voluntarily engaged in something, and then many years later got a 4-hour documentary about how taken advantage of they were. Right? You familiar with that blueprint? So it was just like, I don't know, it was depressing as hell, man. There was like not enough spandex, red, white, and blue, stars and stripes, tennis ball guns for me. It was just more like steroids, drugs. We didn't get paid. Merchandise sales was not coming to us. And now I look like a baseball mitt because I tanned 15 times a week back in the day, and I didn't make any money. That's essentially the synopsis of the American Gladiators 30 for 30. I hate to spoil it for anybody. If you're out there,
I will tell you, I have seen, I didn't even know what I was paying for at the time. But as a high school student back in Fort Worth, Texas, I saw that the American Gladiators were coming to the Tarrant County Convention Center in downtown Fort Worth. And I bought me a couple of tickets and set up shop at like the 2 or 3 o'clock show on a Sunday afternoon at old Tarrant County Convention Center. And I vaguely remember, but I will tell you, man, that tennis ball gun thingy with some big cable hooked to who knows what. I do remember this.
Yeah.
And I remember the standing on the beam with the big, like, giant Q-tips, trying to knock each other off. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. Trying to clean each other's ears, but don't stick it too far in is what your mom said.
American Gladiators on tour.
Gemini, Zap. I never got to see
Nitro
the live show. And again, Nitro, 250 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal. One of my favorite lines of all time. That's from the NES game. Remember that when I was like 8 years old? Popped it in the Nintendo, and here's Nitro giving me that precious gem. Oh, yeah. But I don't know if you want to take in the documentary. If you've got fond memories of American Gladiators, you may just want to pass this one by. Let me scratch that off the list so I remember we already talked about this. I don't want to circle back and double up on it later.
Yes.
Speaking of doubling up, Chris, before we're out of here, let's get to a Texas Tech football conversation because it seems like, it appears like Texas Tech is not quite done portal shopping. Is it possible? We'll get to that coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. Glad to have you along for the ride once again on Locked On Locked On Texas Tech. Pardon me. With Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Maybe somebody should start that show if it doesn't exist just yet. Before we are done today, Chris, something happening with Texas Tech football that I think is worth taking note of. Might have thought that some portal shopping period had come to an end or Texas Tech had gotten what they wanted, whatever else they didn't get. Say la vie, we're moving on. But activity still occurring, Chris, within the transfer portal, as it seems like Texas Tech is in pursuit of a Kentucky student athlete. And if that's not interesting enough, the position is also pretty interesting to me. Can you tell me more about this Kentucky wide receiver, Jordan Anthony, and what's going on?
Yeah, so this is a couple of different conversations here because the first thing is that I think with Braylon Lux being added to the roster, I think they had about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think we kind of felt like there was 2 spots left, open scholarships, whatever. And I think we knew offensive tackle, we knew inside linebacker, we knew defensive back, i.e. somebody that could cover. And so they filled one of those needs. And I think that some of the guys they offered as far as inside linebacker, committed elsewhere. And they never really got much traction or found an upgrade in the portal at the offensive tackle spot, other than I think there was one at Florida Atlantic or Florida International, one of the two. By the way, I had multiple people text me yesterday, my dad included. So shout out to Craig Level. It was the Greenbrier. The Greenbrier was the resort in West Virginia. Yes. Okay. And this is my man David Sanderson texted me as well. World famous. This is where they built the giant bomb shelter and all these things way back in the day. It's been around since the 1700s or something. So anyways, it just jogged my memory. But
wait, they're building bomb shelters in the 1700s?
No. I think the government did in the 1950s maybe or something. I need to go do my research. Anyway, people
were telling me Greenbrier. I'm like, I wanted to give them your number. I'm like, first off, I don't care. So text Chris.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, people were coming out of the woodwork over Greenbrier yesterday. Don't pardon the pun.
Yeah, that's right. So we knew there was some interest there, but I think Braylon Lux fills one of those two spots, and I think they may have taken the other scholarship and given it to somebody that is a graduating senior, like a Henry Teeter would be a good example, and that he would use it for this next semester, and then you can re-recruit to it. And so I don't think it took me a long way to get there, mentioning the Greenbrier and whatnot. But they don't have, I don't think, any scholarships available. Okay. So you got to file that part away. But that's where the old NIL component comes in here. Okay. So we put all that in the blender, and then you're still, if you find an upgrade out there, like potentially Jordan Anthony is. Now let's talk about the player. This is somebody, because when I saw receiver and I saw offered and I saw portal, it's all you perk up, because it's like, okay, the one thing I knew without even knowing anything other than receiver, portal, and tech offer is I knew he could fly. And then you do a little research, and boy, can he. This was second in the country, 60 meters in the indoor. And he I think came in second in the country to a Red Raider. That's some interesting. But there's a track and field component here. This is why he's gotten into the portal late as opposed to the window for football that's already passed, because he's a track athlete. He can still, play football somewhere. But that's why the timing is kind of off. And so that's also why Texas Tech has a heck of a pitch to him, is that we would love to have somebody on the football team that could fly, literally, I'm sure. But I think Wes Kitley would also be involved here, because this is somebody that can absolutely help his track and field program as well. This is going to be tough competition. I don't know if we have it sorted through yet on kind of what at the time that you and I are talking on kind of what the main competition will be. But I think he's originally from Mississippi. And so will he want to come out here and play football or run track? I don't know. But NIL will have to be a component here. It just will, or you're probably not going to get somebody like him. And I would guess most schools at this point of the schedule or of the year, they don't have scholarships either. Some schools maybe have one saved and all that, so that may not necessarily hurt you as much as one would think. And it would be just, hey, we'll not have you on scholarship for this first semester or whatever it would be, and then come spring, we'll take care of you. But this is somebody, I think, with 4 years left to play 3. So I think he's got a redshirt year left, but he's got 3 years of eligibility to play left, so he could play 4 games in 1 year and then 3 full years technically if you want to do that. So again, and he can scoot. So there you go. That's your Jordan Anthony update, and we'll see what happens, Cowan, because if they get him on campus, they're pretty much batting 1,000.
Yeah. Well, and you hadn't even combined your pitch with that of conference title winning, national title winning Wes Kitley. I'm thinking about that added ammunition. If you're going to be a dual sport guy or continue to be a dual sport guy, that was one of my questions, but you already answered it. That's really interesting. I didn't I did not know what the setup was here for this availability, but he is in a track and field portal window. Am I understanding this correctly? It's not a football portal window, but he's available to be on the move, though in a track and field capacity specifically, I guess, in one way or another. But that's interesting. That's just a reminder. There's always a way to work something out.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of gray area, man. And you know, if we hear, and we don't have word on this yet, but if we hear that he's set up to visit here, and if he does make that visit, you know, think about it. As far as portal visitors, okay, not necessarily high school prospects, but like if Texas Tech has hosted somebody, you know, on a portal visit, like in other words, they're in the portal, we're going to host you on official, it's pretty much batting 1,000. Everybody they've brought in here, I mean, Braylon Luck's the latest example, but they brought in everybody that they've kind of identified and got here. I mean, look back at its semester when, you know, Linton and that whole, you know, Dre McCray, and you had to fight off a whole bunch for Dre McCray to land him.
Yeah.
But all those portal guys, even the year before, if they've come on a visit here, I don't think they've missed. I'm pretty sure on that. So that's why I say, man, if it gets far enough to where you say, hey, man, he's expected to visit this weekend, I mean, that seems, because I think if he gets here, they'll figure out a way to make it work, like NIL wise and all that stuff. And like
sure.
the NIL, man, it's what was I told the other day? You're paying you were paying 100 players initially with the kind of that 25,000. Now it's either already up there or going to be up to 120. So it's for things like this to create depth and all those things.
Man, isn't that wild?
Wild.
We talked about it like with the back end of your roster and walk-ons, and man, could you improve the quality of your walk-on pool by virtue of NIL opportunity, maybe scholarship guys elsewhere, maybe on a lower level roster or something like that, but you can get them here as a walk-on because you can offer, and I don't know how careful I have to be about saying like you can offer, someone can offer NIL compensation and things like that. But yeah, that's something you see, I guess, playing out right here. And Chris, does that cover, are we now covered entirely the group of walk-ons? Because I think previously it was like 100 or 105. So there's like 15 walk-ons, I guess.
Now there's 35.
Okay. So
it's going to be up to, it's going to be up to 120. I don't even, I don't, you know, I think when you get, I think, you know, 85 scholarships, I think that the rule, unless this has changed, and maybe it has, but I think you used to be able to allow, you know, like the old preferred walk-on, that would get you up to 105. But you're talking, you know, 120, which is what I was told. And like the Matador Club setup is just crushing it, man. I mean, it's just been really well executed, and I think it's made a huge difference in Texas Tech athletics initially. I think it's extremely well organized and all those things. Whereas, you know, you see other schools are kind of the moving target. Everybody's kind of doing a different thing. Everybody on this deal seems to be on the same page, which can be difficult. You know, my opinion may be different than yours and all those things, but and it's people that are like listening to us or that are on RedRaidersports.com and people like that are the everyday fan. They're not. There's big donors on the RedRaidersports.com, but there's a lot of everyday fans too that are just kind of, you know, like you and I are just normal, you know, and they're giving a little bit and it all adds up, but it spills into things just like this, which allows you to be in a recruiting battle with a kid when you don't have a scholarship available. I mean, your kicker from UAB, I mean, you know, it just creates, you're going to have is quality of depth or back end of your roster that you've ever had because of things like this. And, you know, because well,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it allows you to go way over your 85-man scholarship limit, technically. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's what you're doing.
You know, there are coaching staffs out there not taking advantage of this. or that are not working it to the degree that others are. I feel like Texas Tech is in the category of working it. I mean, to every degree. So I hope that you're going to really see some advantage exercise because of that, because I guarantee you there are staffs out there that are not turning over these stones either in an identification kind of way or, Chris, trying to maneuver in the way that we're talking about here with collective compensation and what you can do with that, particularly on the back end of your roster and trying to round out some of that depth. If you're at the forefront of this, you are going to have an advantage. I don't have any doubt about that. And it seems like, just my perspective, that Texas Tech is one of those in the category of being at the forefront of these types of things. Before we're out of here, do you have any guess or a feel for how this Anthony kid was identified? Is this a Wes Kittley giving a call to Coach McGuire, hey, maybe you're interested, or vice versa? Or do you have any clue how that might have come about to identify him in this way?
I don't, but I'd be shocked if you're not dead on there, because this is one of the top sprinters in the country. And I think if, obviously Coach Kittley and his son's coaching football, there's some natural synergy there. If he enters in the track portal, Wes Kittley almost had to have,
Gotcha.
gone, hey, you might want to take a look. Again, speculation on my part, but I think that you're probably dead on there.
It would make sense if he's in that track context at that time.
Yes.
Not to say that a football coach couldn't be waiting. Like, is this guy going to make a move? But that would be much more off the beaten path.
Because he was a 4-star.
That was the case.
Yeah, Cal, he was like a 4-star prospect. I mean, he's a big time football prospect too. And again, there may be other, like I saw the Kaluma kid for Creighton. This is on the basketball front. Yeah, there's some late portal additions there, and he lit Texas Tech up for 18 in Maui last year in I think a 15 or 16 point loss. And he decides, I'm not going to the NBA draft, and so I'm going to go into the portal. Well, here's a new name, but it's like, yeah, you got to be on it. You got to be paying attention. You got to have some options. And, yeah, that's right. Come on down.
Come on down, big boy.
Yeah.
We got a spot for you.
Yes.
Man, really interesting stuff. And if you're a Tech fan, should be really glad that you've got some of this, synergy and connection, whether it's from another program like Wes Kittley's track and field program, or as we've talked about many, many times before, guys like James Blanchard, just 24/7, 365 with that prospect list of guys being identified all over the country. And clearly the moment you're taking a rest is the moment that your competitor is probably going to find a guy or something like that. So never an opportunity to take your foot off of the gas. I don't want to go Steve Sarkisian. You know my mantra, right? All gas, no brakes.
Well,
you know my mantra.
I will say this. In all seriousness, this kid can flat run. You need more of this. And this this statement is undefeated. When you have a football team, you can never have enough speed. It's not possible to ever, ever have enough speed. It's like you can always be faster, whether that's the depth or whatever. And so to add that component, because I'm just sitting here thinking about if you do land a kid like this, putting Jordan Anthony on one end and Dre McCray on the other, and at this point, you're cooking with gas, and I think not to use another gas analogy, but that's the reality.
You better bring some icy hot to the stadium because you're gonna be having some whiplash from that old neck.
Soft tissue
guys
injuries.
Like Anthony, that's right, and McCray are out there. He'll soft tissue injury gang. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned his. He was decorated as a prospect, as a 4-star guy. So when we're just talking about speed. Of course, I'm instantly just thinking about hot hands from Little Giants. Like we're going to have to get the stick on him while he's running down the field. Or does he have any hands? Hope we have the chance to find out. And maybe you do if you're able to get him on campus and then get him to be a Red Raider, which Chris has mentioned you've had great success with whenever you have gotten them to the 806, our little slice of paradise. Chris, enjoyed the time, the insights, and the perspectives. As always, we're going to be back to wrap up the week tomorrow. Get in with us early so you can get set for that 11 a.m. first pitch from Gainesville, Florida, as Tim Tadlock and the Red Raiders get going. Day sports, day drinking. If you celebrate, get those livers lubed up, boys. We got a busy weekend coming up, and we'll be back to get you set for it tomorrow as we wrap up the week. Chris, thanks for the time, man. See you tomorrow.
Keep hope alive, everybody. We'll talk to you.
You got it. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And check us out on the SiriusXM app. That's SXM in the App Store. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for joining us once again today. We'll see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.